it and take it away.
Well, Abby, thank you so much for having me here today. This is such a great resource, and the folks here are so good at the job they do. Bill, thank you for all your support, and I'll be glad to have this be very interactive so that we go back and forth and I can learn from you as well today. We're going to talk about PREPP, and it's the methodology that I use to be able to do a quality job in putting together podcasts. And PREPP stands for plan, record, edit, publish, and promote. And that'll be the structure of this presentation. We'll go through various different segments to show you some tips and pointers on that. And then we'll have some questions and discussions at the end. Everybody cool with that? Okay, any questions? All right, so according to Google, kind of a boring definition, upload some audio to the internet and then let people listen to it through various means. Podcasting is actually one of the things that are really emerged at the very beginning of the internet with a thing called the file transfer protocol, the ability to be able to load things up into a computer and share them. And it's really increased today so that I believe we're headed towards a golden age of podcasting. So since you're here today, I assume everybody's heard of podcasts. Has anybody ever actually participated in a podcast? See a few people. Has anybody actually ever produced a podcast? And there's a couple. So that kind of squares with really the statistics that we're still at a point where roughly half of the population in the country have never even heard the term podcasting. But that's changing quickly. By almost every available growth measure, and you'll see a few of them flashing on the screen here, interest has increased in podcasting, especially lately. And part of that's due to what people call the serial effect. Has anyone ever listened to the podcast Serial? Well, if you haven't, it's at serial.org, and it's produced by National Public Radio, and it's phenomenal. They've taken the science of podcasting and really made it into an art. People who have experience in the radio business, they've combined interviews with content, been able to put it together on their website, added additional links and things. So it's really quite the interesting series. They've actually done 2 series. The first was about a murder investigation with some kind of suspicious background. And then the second year, they're looking at the Bo Bergdahl case. And it's really interesting the way they take a 360 view. It has a little bit of a slant to it, but just to be able to hear from the people, hear from folks that are involved, have archival audio, it's really interesting. So if you have a chance, Serial is one of the great ones. Why do people like podcasts? Well, there's something for every taste. If you listen to podcasts on the internet, I know Bill says he listens to them quite a bit. There's something out there from every different perspective, from some people sitting on their porch chatting to the top 10. In any different week, the top 10 changes, but this is on a snapshot that I took the other day. I've listened to podcasts, people talking about professional wrestling, and then there's all kinds of subjects that we wouldn't bring up in polite company. But the interesting thing is there's just so much out there and so many different perspectives. They're easily accessible through the internet, through apps. They're portable. You can download them onto your phone. You can download them onto your iPod. You can take them with you wherever you go. You can listen to them in the car. Convenient. You listen to them when you want to, and you don't have to listen to the whole episode. You can stop and start. So there's a lot of really good things about it being in tune with your personal interests. So if you're interested in any particular subject and you want to hear someone say it in their own words, some are good, some are great, some are okay, but there's just so much to look at. How are businesses benefiting? Well, really, podcasting should be part of an overall social media strategy. It's not really something, if you're doing it for your business, you want to have it as an independent thing. You want to think about how you tie that to your social accounts, how you tie that into your blogging, how you might be, if you're doing video on YouTube, tie it all together. It's about bringing a voice to your business, giving a personality, influencing opinions. Perhaps that's why you want to do it. Reach new markets. It's a great way to reach new markets because, as I'll show you, podcasts are distributed in lots of different ways, and even though you post it in one venue, it finds its way across the internet to lots of different places. It allows you to personalize your business and overall, grow your business. So, anybody have any questions so far? Yes, please.
I'm curious whether there's a place you go to find out what podcasts are available, or how do you zero in on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you Google podcast, Google podcast subject business, you'll get a list. But there's also, and I'll talk about them at the end, what's called podcatchers, where they're podcasting aggregating services. Probably the most famous of that is iTunes. You might not think of iTunes as podcasts, but there's actually a section on iTunes of podcasts of all different categories of interest. So, any other questions? Great. So, PREPP. Hopefully, when you hear PREPP, it's got an extra P on it from what you would think of when you think of preparation, but I really hope it brings back to you what is probably the most important aspect if you're going to be doing podcasting, and that is preparation. So it always comes back to preparation, but and the first P element of it is plan. Again, reminding you record, edit, publish, and promote. And each of these phases are important, but they all, again, come back to that preparation and planning at the very beginning. So planning. The first thing you want to think about if you're going to create a podcast is, first of all, what's your purpose and what's the best modality that you want to be able to employ. And there's lots of different flavors of podcasting. There's just the audio itself. There's the ability to combine it with still images. There's the ability to combine it with video. So there's lots of different ways to expand the concept of podcast as you're trying to think about your business. What are you trying to achieve? You're trying to gain mind share, promote a cause, motivate action, reach new markets and customers, get something off your chest. There's a lot of podcasts out there, people just venting. But from the standpoint of your business, really think about what you want to achieve and focus on that, because it's very easy to dilute your efforts. What's the best modality? Written word, spoken word. Not everything is a great podcast, and so some things you want to put in text. But when you want to be able to speak them, when you maybe want to combine those words and pictures together, maybe you want to add some video, podcasting is a great way to do things. What's your purpose? Why are you doing this? Do you expect to go viral? There's good and bad to that. Or, more appropriately for your business, are you looking for an intimate audience or a specific demographic? So you want to really think through, who do I want to reach and how can I best reach them? And then how do you want to speak to the audience? Do you want it to be a monologue? Do you want to do an interview? I've found through my history of about 150 podcasts that the interviews are the ones that are the most popular. I think people like to listen in on conversation, to be able to sort of be that third-party fly on the wall between two experts or two people that are just having a friendly conversation. It's also a great way to network. If there's somebody that you're really interested in meeting and they're doing something really interesting, a great way to break the ice with them is to say, hey, would you like to be on my podcast? And I've met some really interesting people. I've gotten some business because of the ability to be able to reach out to people and network through interviewing them on podcasts. Are you covering a particular event? I do a lot of work of going to trade shows. I bring my kit with me. That's what this is, my traveling podcast kit. I've got a backpack in the back there that everything fits into. And I'll go to a trade show and I'll interview people on the floor. Do you have a question? Yes?
Can you talk about the equipment needed for the broadcasting as well?
Yes, I will. I have a slide on now. I'll show you a little bit about that too as well. Yeah? You're covering news and artistic creation. So purpose and modality are important. Probably the most important consideration is your audience. What's your ultimate goal and who are you trying to connect with? Are you going to be? You want to be very targeted, especially in a business. If you're trying to reach people who are interested in sailing, you want to make sure that when you create your content, that it's really compelling to them, relevant, compelling, and if possible, captivating. I'm sure there's lots of adventures that you could talk about. You also want it to be interactive. And I'll show you as we get into the slides a little bit, one of the things you'd like to do is get a conversation going about the media that you've presented, either through social media, if you're posting to a website, the ability for people to comment, lots of different ways to try to make that a conversation and an ongoing dialogue. Quality is very important. I strive for great quality. I don't always achieve it because it can be very hard, especially when I'm walking around a trade show and trying to interview people, background noise, things go wrong with your equipment, but try to do the best you can. Succinct and to the point. I've found that people will listen if you ask them for 5 minutes of your time. If you ask them for 30 minutes of their time, you better have something that's really interesting and that they really want to listen to. I tell my guests, and we're going to do a little recording demonstration in a few minutes, I usually tell my guests that I want to have 3 to 4 minutes of good audio. Typically in an interview we go twice that much, but when you set that expectation at the beginning, it helps people to think I want to be as prompt as quickly as possible. So again, the best possible recording, and I'll talk a little bit about your circumstances and how you record. Background noise, controlling the environment is an important part of that. High quality production. Recording is one thing, production is another. Once you've recorded, you've got to go and package that recording, and I'll show you a little bit about how to do that as we go through. And you also want to make sure that you're available across all of the platforms that your audience might be interested in listening. So I'll talk a little bit about, I did already mention podcatchers. I'll talk a little bit about other ways that you can spread your content. Bless you. So your question about tools. Afterwards, if you're interested, you come up and take a look at some of the things that I have here. But the basics for audio, you want, of course, a computer because you're going to want to, although some of the more recent tools through Facebook and Snapchat and others give you the ability to edit on your smartphone. If you're going to be representing your business, you want to really think about doing a really high-quality production. So you do that through a computer. Microphones, as Abby pointed out, I'm the microphone king here today. It's very important to have some high-quality microphones. So one of the things I have here is when I'm in my studio and I'm recording a monologue, I have a very high-quality microphone for that. In my kit that I carry, I didn't spare any expense on the microphones because while I'm out in the field and trying to interview people, I want to make sure that I'm able to capture their audio as best as possible. A good quality headset as well, especially when you're mastering your recordings, you want to have that. I also have, when interviewing a guest, and I'm able to set up my gear in this way, I also have a headset that I would let the guest listen so that we both have a good understanding of what it's going to sound like when it all comes together. An audio mixer. This audio mixer that I have, there's a picture of it up here. It's a decent quality audio mixer. You can spend a ton of money on this kind of equipment. I actually, my son gave me this one. He got it on eBay used, which is pretty good. I also have a device here it's a recorder. It also allows me to mix. There's inexpensive ones. You want to get something with some decent quality. That portable one has got some really decent quality to it. This one is really good when you're able to sit down. You have multiple inputs across the top here, the ability to plug in 4 microphones and also other types of audio. You've got lots of different controls to be able to control as you're recording. So that mixer is important. And then the editing software. And we're going to go through a couple of slides. I'll show you some editing software, the one that I use, and how I use it. If you're going to add video, you want to make sure you have a screen capture capability. That's something that's evolved quite a bit over the years. If you're going to be using screenshots and things, today it's much easier than it used to be. A camera, if you're going to be out and about taking photos, a good camera is good. And then some editing illustration software if you're going to be manipulating those images.
Can you use your iPhone? Is your iPhone sufficient for like camera shots or videos?
You get some really good quality with the iPhone, so for certain things, absolutely. If you're going to do something that you really want a high quality production, I would go and use more specialized equipment for that. Yeah, go a little bit higher end. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You can rent. If you're not going to use it all the time. So, yeah. The mobile technology has come so far in such a short period of time. They're getting better all the time. Especially if you want to do something live, Periscope. Those kinds of venues are really good for the mobile devices.
You were mentioning earlier that everybody can make a podcast and watch it at their leisure.
Yes.
I want to say, how is that? Do you just go on the website at your leisure and watch it, or is there an ability to download the webcast and just watch that podcast?
Both are true. So a good presented podcast will give you the ability to listen online as well as download. So I try to do that with mine. And yeah, so downloads. For me, I publish in MP3 format. So you can just download it. You can put it on your phone, listen on your phone. My feeds will go to iTunes. I'll show you how that happens. And so you can also subscribe on iTunes or one of the podcatchers to various series. Yes, Mark?
What do you think of SoundCloud? Because I think SoundCloud is one of the best pod platforms out there. It has a mobile app.
What is it called?
SoundCloud.
SoundCloud.
Yeah, that's the one that I see everybody has sort of shifted to.
Yeah, I'll cover that in a slide, actually. I'll mention SoundCloud and I'll mention some others. There's lots of them to choose from, and I'll talk a little bit about it. Probably that's the best, but there's also a cost that comes with that as a podcaster, so you want to balance, how, if you're trying to go viral, a SoundCloud is a great way to do it. If you're just interested in an intimate audience, that you're a specialized topic, you may not need to spend the money on a SoundCloud. So.
I don't know my question.
Yes.
Sure, so is it like a PDF that you can't alter, so someone can download it, right?
That's right.
You can't then go edit it and redistribute it.
Well, they could, but they can't post it back to your link, unless they're really a very sophisticated hacker. So, I mean, anybody could take a copy of your audio and cut and paste it. That's.
People don't worry about that.
I haven't really seen it as a real problem, right? Maybe in this political season, you're seeing things like that happen, right? But yeah, right. But yes, I mean, it's really. At least I don't think I'm in a position where somebody's going to do that to me. Who knows? Maybe I made somebody mad a long time ago and they're kept a grudge. But so again, getting back to the prep and preparation and research, one of the things that's important is if you're going to be doing this a lot and you're going to be doing it for your business, you want to create a studio where you have some resources set up, where you can control the environment, where people aren't going to come in and start pressing the microwave in the next room and you hear the popcorn popping in the background. The podcast Serial, I mentioned at the beginning, is one episode where, a couple of episodes actually, where the reporter is attending a trial. And at night, she's coming back to her hotel room and recording segments for the podcast. And what she does is she takes the pillows off her bed and climbs in the closet and puts the pillows all around so that there's no background noise to interrupt. So creating a studio, whether you're doing it on the road or whether you're doing it in your business, is one of the key things. And I don't have really a lot of pointers on that. Maybe get in touch later if you wanted to talk about some of those things. But that's the first thing. The second thing is know your topics. If you're going to talk about something and you're going to put it on the internet and it's going to become part of the public record, make sure you know it. If you're going to do an interview, try to get to know your guests a little bit. Google them, check out their LinkedIn profile, have some interesting things to be able to break the ice with so that they're comfortable. And actually, Abby's going to come up here in a few minutes and we're going to demonstrate how I go about doing that myself. If you have the opportunity with the person you're going to interview, pre-interview them, if possible. I have usually try to think up 4 or 5 questions that I will give someone as an example of what it is I'm going to speak to them about. Those may not be the questions that come up when we actually do the interview. Sometimes we sit down and start a conversation and just roll. But it gives your guest a sense for what you're going to talk about. If you're going to be doing something in a remote location, try to do a site visit. As I said, I attend a lot of trade shows, and so what I try to do is get there early, maybe the day before, get somebody to let me into if I'm going to be walking around the trade show floor, walk around a little bit, see what the environment is like, see what you could possibly run into. If you're not in your studios, just kind of tripped into that a little bit. Do your best to control the sounds, the surrounding sounds. If you need to ask somebody to take a walk and go someplace where it's a little more quiet, you'd be willing to do that. I've done that many different times. Arrive early and test. So as many of you were flowing in here this morning, I was still setting up my stuff and I was testing, and hopefully I got all the bugs out. We'll find out in a few minutes when I go through some of the other parts of the presentation.
What do you do to test it? Just make sure.
You plug everything in. Bill was helping me before to make sure that the audio could play through the speakers. Try to think of all the different ways things can fail, and Murphy's Law. Something's always going to happen, and it does. But you do the best you can, is what I'd say. So, if you're going to have a guest, a good practice is to have a waiver or a lease form. We all have great intentions, but unfortunately we live in a society today that's very litigious. Something that you say that's very innocuous can flip in its meaning, and so you might have the best intentions, you might have a disagreement later, who knows, but a good practice is to ask the person to sign a release or a waiver that basically says, look, I'm going to put this on the internet, you participated in it, I'm not going to be making money off of it, so you're not going to make money off of it. And I have an example of that if anyone would like to look at that later. And if you want to come up and be on the podcast, then I'll ask you to sign one. So, bottom line is protect your business, protect yourself. All right, so I think we're going to do a little demonstration on how to record a podcast. So,
Ready for me?
Oops. Yeah, just as I begin here. So, as I said, test. Take your time. Make sure that your equipment is ready. Double and triple check everything. Make your guest as comfortable as possible. So, Abby, welcome.
Good.
Thank you. And monitor good headphones. I'm going to put those on. And re-record is necessary. And as I said, less is more. So, let me just sit down here with Abby. Abby, welcome, and thanks for your time. This is really important.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. I do have headsets for you, but what I...
We don't want to use them right now.
Well, one thing I don't want you to mess up here, but the other is I forgot an adapter. So unfortunately, there's something went wrong today. So I'm going to just toggle over here to my recording software. This is, I use Adobe Audition. There's various different types. I'll suggest a few in a few minutes. What this allows me to do is capture audio, edit audio, and I also have a recording device, a portable recording device here, which allows me to, if I'm just extemporaneously speaking to someone in a hall, I can record it on there and then feed it into this software and edit it. So Abby, I'm going to put my headset on so that I can listen to the mix and see how that goes. And I'll plug this up so it doesn't make too much noise. Our setup here, I had to use the same output. So Abby, just before we get started here, I just want you to know that we're going to record this, which is really good because
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, if something's in your head and it comes out of your mouth different than you thought it was, No problem.
I'll date when that happens. All right, great.
The good thing is because I'm recording this, I'm able to go back and cut and paste
that's great.
and replace it. So just pause
If
for
I
a
mess
second.
up, you can cut it out.
Yeah, just
Okay, good.
give me a little segment of silence though, so I'll have it be able to edit it, and then just do it again. If we need to do it 10 times, that's fine as well.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, I'm glad. All right, I'm just going to start the recorder, and you should see that across. Oops, I have to turn on the microphones. There we go. And you see as I speak, a pattern is emerging on the software. So, Abby, just tell me a little bit about the work that you do here at the Enterprise Center.
So I've been at the Enterprise Center for about a year, and I plan all of our workshops, and I manage all of our social media, and I like to say that I do anything they want me to do. I do a lot of stuff here. So I write a lot of copy, I do all the marketing, I give tours to students. That's actually one of my favorite things that I do here at the Enterprise Center. It's a lot of fun.
Nice, nice. You mentioned social media. You do a lot in social media. How important is that to the work that you do at the Enterprise Center?
You know what, it's really important for what we do because one of our main audiences is the startup community. And where is the startup community living? On social media. One of the key things, though, about social media is that I need to build our communities. Because if I'm back there tweeting and I don't have a community that's following me, I might as well be in a closet, right, shouting out to no one. So that's one of the main things that we try to do here. We build communities. We build communities through our workshops, and we build communities on social media. It's a lot of fun.
Well, fantastic. Well, Abby, thank you very much for being a guest on the podcast.
Thanks, Guy. It was really awesome to be here.
So that little bit of a role play gives you a sense of how an interview might go. And you also see that as Abby was talking, I captured her audio. And I'm going to show a little bit in a few minutes here about how to edit that. But what I would first do is save this. You see that it's a stereo track. And one of the things that's good about the stereo track is that you're able to see actually graphically when Abby is speaking, when I'm speaking. One of the mistakes I made, which was I didn't turn the gain up enough on mine, so you see a very much different set of peaks for Abby. That's the volume of what was recorded versus the volume that I did. So I would have wanted to re-record that. We're not going to do that now. But one of the great things I have, because I have all the gear and I get to go home after this, is if I've got a good quality copy of Abby's audio, then I can re-record my stuff. Yeah. And in the future, if maybe Abby thinks of something important that she wished she'd said during the presentation, we can get on a Skype call or Google Hangouts and we can record. Abby can record something on her phone and email it to me, and I'm able to then add this to the presentation, and I'll show you a little bit about the production in a minute. So Abby, thank you for being a guest.
Thanks, it was a lot of fun.
All right, we'll go back to the presentation. Okay, let's put this back. Okay. And get it right the first time. You do your best to get it right the first time, but as I said, you can also make mistakes, and there's lots of ways to recover from those mistakes when you get into the production part of the. So there was our audience participation part of the show. Thank you, Abby. So edit. Editing is probably the most time-consuming part of producing, but it's also probably the most critical. You need some good editing tools, good software. So as I said, I use the Adobe Audition software, but there's others. Audacity is a free software that you can get to use. There's a way to pay for advanced features in it. Sony Soundforge, Audio Studio, Sonar, GarageBand, and Mixcraft. There's a whole bunch of different audio software out there. Sometimes when you buy a piece of audio equipment, it'll come with a CD that has a basic version of editing software. I use the Adobe Suite for my business because I do a lot of different documents and presentations, and so that Audition comes as part of the suite. That's one of the reasons I use it. A good quality headset is important. a good quality mouse because you're going to be doing a lot of copy and paste and editing, and I'll show you a little bit about how that all goes in just a second. And you also want to make sure you have a good ergonomic work area because you can spend a lot of time editing. Sometimes you don't have to spend a lot of time. Sometimes you get a guest and you're on and they're on and the conversation just flows and you can just go through and clean up a couple of things and then you're ready to go. Yes, please.
Is it necessary to be perfect? Because the live streaming today, the perfect you are, people more like...
That's right, yeah. So I think you want to strive for perfection. You don't want to strive to have it look like it's overproduced, though. I think there's a difference there. You want to have as much quality to the work you do because one of the things is when you put it on the internet, you never know what somebody's going to be using to listen to that. So if your quality is as high as it can be, whatever the device they're using, hopefully it'll compensate for maybe one of the things I was going to say as we get into this is, I produce things in mono because even though it would be great to have stereo, maybe if you're interviewing somebody, have their voice come out of one speaker and your voice come out of the other, that would be a really neat production value. You can't always depend that the person who's listening to that has a headset that's going to have two working speakers in them. So you want to make sure you record it in mono, and that way it comes out both speakers equally. So I'll show you that. Yeah. Thank you for the great question in the lead-in. So the editing software, I'll just point out a couple of things about the editing software that are important. One is tracks, the ability to use tracks, and I'll show you why this is important in a minute. But as you can see, I've got, this is where I would put my audio, my guest audio if I had two guests. And you can also do a lot of other things, and I'll explain some of those in just a minute. So tracks are important. Assets, and this will become more clear as well about the different things that will make up the podcast. A toolbox with lots of different features, so whatever the software is you decide to use, you want to look and see what the tools are like and how easy is it for you to be able to use, how flexible and how creative can you be. Up here, the timeline. This actually, you'll see why this is really important, but really it gives you, over the course of a conversation, the ability to be able to go back to different points in the audio. And then, again, additional controls, and I think I'll talk a little bit about this in a second. And then these things down here that I've already got some things populated, we'll talk about those in just a minute. Okay. One of the things we talked about just previously about the tracks, so each track gives you the ability to have each voice as part of your conversation in a separate editing space on the canvas. To be able to have things in their own track allows you to be able to manipulate how they present in the final product. This software allows me to be able to add more tracks if I need to, delete them, rearrange them. And it's all about being able to work smoothly and easily. The labeling, that's a very important part of it, to be able to label correctly. Some other tools to be able to change it from a stereo to a mono, to be able to manipulate the volume and the stereo mix. All of these things are important tools to be able to make it possible for you to edit. And I'm going to just show you a video here, hopefully make it a little more sense. So I'm going to maybe need to turn the audio up just a little bit here, so hopefully this won't.
In this short video clip, I'm going to show you some of the basics on how to edit a piece of audio that you've already captured. So let's first listen to the audio.
So, I think first and foremost, I'd say we're really trying to give some preview to our customers, to the market, what kind of exciting things we have coming, here over the next year.
You'll see in this window that we have really a visual representation of the audio that we've captured, a picture of the audio. The first thing I'm going to do here is use some of the available tools to resize so we can see this just a little bit better. You'll see that I'm able to zoom in and make the picture of the audio a little bit clearer. You'll also see that I have controls down here, allow me to pause, play, record, move forward, move back, move all the way to the beginning, all the way to the end. These are very helpful when it comes to editing. I'm going to zoom in here, we'll get a much better picture of what we're working with. I'm going to play a little bit of the audio here, and I want you to listen to this at the very beginning.
Sure. So
Hear that really kind of cruddy sounding, warbling sound at the beginning? I'm going to do something to get rid of that. Here's one of the great things about this software. Just in the same way that you maybe edit a Word document in Microsoft Office, you can do similar things with audio. You can highlight, and you can copy, you can paste, and in this case I'm going to delete this section that doesn't sound too good. This person I interviewed was a great speaker, but we spoke for a long time, and both of us were getting a little bit weary, and so towards the end some of the bad habits that we all have kind of crept into her speech. And so I'm going to show you how we're able to fix that.
Sure. So, I think first and foremost,
There it is. We all do it. This next little bit's going to sound a little weird, but just hang in there for a second, it'll make sense. Here's another great tool, the ability to be able to go back and forth, and while you're doing that, listen to what actually the picture is representing. So this lets you really be able to see the individual elements of speech. You can actually see that just as in the same way that we were able to highlight and delete that warbly sound at the very beginning of the clip, we're going to get rid of these knows. So there it's gone. Let's listen to the clip.
Sure. So I think first and foremost, I'd say we're really trying to give some preview to our customers, to the market, what kind of exciting things we have coming.
Here's something else I didn't really like. I hear her breath, so let's see if we can get rid of that.
Preview to our customers, to the market.
I want to be precise here, so I'm going to show you another tool that will make sure that I get exactly what I'm looking for. Here I click this little toggle, lets me listen to the sound over and over and over again, make sure I have exactly what I want. And I highlight it and delete as before. Let's listen again, see where we're at.
Sure. So I think first and foremost, I'd say we're really trying to give some preview to our customers, to the market, what kind of exciting things we have coming, here over the next.
Oops, there we have one of those pesky so let's get rid of that.
And coming, here, here.
One last listen.
Sure. So I think first and foremost, I'd say we're really trying to give some preview to our customers, to the market, what kind of exciting things we have coming.
That was just a quick editing session. There's a lot to editing. I couldn't give you practicum on it, but I wanted to give you a sense for what editing is about, and I didn't want you to have to suffer through my poor mouse skills to have me do it live. So hopefully that was helpful. So this is audio I've recorded of someone I've interviewed, just as I interviewed Abby. The audio that I interviewed Abby with was stereo, so the first thing I did before I started this audio editing session was I converted each track to mono, excuse me, and then that gives me the ability to go through. And Abby's a wonderful speaker. I didn't hear her say or hum or right or all those different things that kind of creep into speech from time to time, so I wouldn't have to do a lot of editing with her. But I was able here to clean this up just a little bit and make it more interesting for the person who's going to be listening ultimately. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you could identify the emails, will it show you all the emails? All of them?
So in this software, there's a tool that allows you to go in and capture a sound print and then find them all and delete them all in one fell swoop. I find that I like to do it manually because sometimes that process doesn't result in the automated process doesn't result in the quality that I like, but it is available for you to do that, and it can save a lot of time. So thanks, great question, thank you.
I have used something like this, and it is very tedious to get the exact, like, phrase, or is there an easier way to make that a little easier?
Well, it depends on the software. This software is very intuitive. I don't know if you noticed that when I dragged across, it actually finds the ending in many
I know
times.
there was something you did where you could tell it was just that segment, it was just that section.
Right. Well, I highlighted the section, and then this little button down below here, I can turn that on, which then, when I hit the play, allows me to listen over and over and over again, make sure it's exactly the thing I want to get rid of before I get rid of it. One of the things I also do is I make 2 copies of the original, so I have the ability to be able to go back. And I also showed deleting a breath. What I will often do is, if you delete all of the breaths, the audio ends up sounding unnatural. So sometimes I will take a bit of silence from another part of the recording and replace the breath with that silence, so that you have the pause, but you don't have the sort of gasping sound. So.
Do you feel that people can listen to you twice as much or twice as fast as you can talk? You know what I mean? So people can assimilate a lot.
That's true, yes. I think we listen at about 5 times the speed that we speak.
Oh,
it's
really?
One of the statistics I've heard, yeah. So,
you should just speed it up.
yeah, the only thing is, though, you also have to remember, you're going to put this out on the internet, you don't know who's listening to it, so you really need to think, I don't want to use the term, it's not the lowest common denominator, but sort of the universal. It could be a person who has a disability, or maybe a cognitive disability, and they can't, maybe their brain works at the speed of everyone else, but their ears don't. So you want to make sure that you do your best to be, the people that do the best on TV, like Tom Brokaw, right? They try to get the people who have that Midwestern, no inflection voice, to go on TV. So I think there was a question over here first, Mark, and then I'll get to you. Was there a question? Yes, please.
Now you're a classmate, so do you have any courses that you teach? Are you coaching somebody? Because I'm a serious husband running with that.
Well, I don't teach any courses, but I have a consulting business, so if you're interested in talking a little bit about what I might be able to help you with, I'd be glad to do that, so yes.
Yeah, a lot of podcasts on the Periscope, like hundreds of them, and I want to refocus them, but I think that would be too much because when you do the online streaming, you do a lot of thinking,
Yes.
stuff like that.
Yes. So I demonstrated editing audio software, but I used a video editing software to make that video with. So with Periscope, you'd be using that type of function as well. So, yeah. Thank you. Yes, Mark.
Yeah, they try to speak in what they call newscaster English.
Right.
You would look for accent reduction courses. But my question is somebody, because I have multiple sclerosis, so I do have cognitive issues. I've had is there a way you can add captions to a podcast? Do any of the platforms have that? So in case there is a thick accent or somebody, wants to see the words, which can help, especially if you're not a native speaker of English.
Yes. So an audio podcast is hard to do the closed captioning, but what I'll often do is take the audio, and I'll show this at the end, combine it with some slides, make a video of it, and put it on YouTube, and then YouTube and other platforms give you the ability to close caption. Yeah. Yes.
Something about the accent. I love accent, but I want to be clear when I'm speaking and go through the podcast. Because it's like me. That's a positive expression. Everything about how you get a new person with an accent.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with the accent, but the things you look to get rid of is repeating yourself or... Yes, Abby?
I just wanted to make a comment on accents. I was in college, and if you've got an accent, there's no problem with an accent as long as people can hear your message. And as soon as people are listening to the accent or the message, that's the situation.
guys, how come when you speed it up, the voices go high, and if you slow it down, the voices go low?
Yeah, it's yeah, it's not perfect, right? It's a moving train going by. I don't know that they go lower and higher, but they sound that way when you stretch them out, I think. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, great. Well, thank you. It was a great dialogue. Okay. So that's one little piece of audio that you're pulling together, which will be part of a greater composition. So this is a different screen, and we just saw that this is actually, we're back to the canvas. In that screen, we were just looking at one little piece of audio. So what you want to do now is create sort of this artistic piece that you're putting together, and there's different components to that. And we talked about the various different tracks, and hopefully this will make some sense on how that all comes together. So one of the things you want to do with your podcast is, if you're going to be doing it over time, you want it to have makes sense with your business. You want to brand it. And the way I brand my podcasts very often is to create a unique bumper sound that I begin and end with. It's sort of an audio icon that hopefully makes people remember. And I'll just turn the volume up again here and play a couple of them for you to give you a sense. So. So one of the things, one of the podcast series that I did was via Tech Talk. Via is a company in the telecommunications industry. I used to work for them. And so that was a bunch of different sounds of modems and telephones dialing. And what I did was I took all of those pieces of audio, put them together, and created a montage. And so hopefully when people think about Tech Talk, via Tech Talk, they remember that sound. It's a technique you see on TV too with the there's a bunch of different series that have that doink sound at the beginning. So.
Morning, sleepingheads. WMWM begins another broadcast day.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to welcome our 33rd year Salem State Series, Jim Gray and Tom Brady.
For this audience, but so I am a member of the Salem State University Alumni Association Board of Directors, and one of the projects that I started last year was what we call SSU Viking Voices. So we have a podcast series about things that are going on, all the great things that are going on campus here, and this year I've expanded that. So that's the bumper sound for SSU Viking Voices. You also want to have, before you jump into it, I feel an intro. And so with your intro, you want to maybe have a different voice than your voice. I've paid people to do intros.
Welcome to the L Podcast Channel, a gathering place for innovators and new ideas changing how government serves the citizen. Listen, learn, and leverage the expertise of the people who tirelessly innovate as government pursues excellence in its mission to serve the citizen.
I don't like the text like I did when I first created it, but that's a professional voice-over artist. I don't know if anybody has Sirius XM, but maybe have a contest, see if you know who that is. But I also have lately, because the software has increased in quality so much, rather than pay somebody.
Welcome to Conversations Between Peers, dedicated to bringing you commentary, news, interviews and timely updates on the communications industry. Here's your host, Guy Clinch.
So there, what I basically did was use a text-to-speech engine to take the text and create that intro. And so now I have a different voice introducing me in my podcasts, Conversation Between Peers, and I didn't have to pay a lot of money to a voiceover artist. So just like every other thing in the world, technology is taking over that field as well too. So the basic point though is giving your business a voice, giving your podcast a personality, making it unique, giving people something to remember it by, and putting that together in the canvas. Now, when you're using audio, and if you're doing video or if you're putting static slides, digital rights can be a very tricky thing. You want to make sure that if you're using audio clips or you're using pictures that you understand the legal implications. If you spend a lot of time creating a podcast or any other piece of artistic endeavor, you realize how much effort it takes. You can see why people can be sensitive about you reusing their stuff. So this is a really great guide to give you an idea of a lot of the different legal issues surrounding creating media that's going to be on the internet. So I encourage you to check it out, and especially your digital rights issues. So you make sure that if you're going to create a bumper sound and you're going to use sounds in that either you create them yourself or you make sure that the person who has created them, if they want to be paid, you pay them. If they don't want to be paid, you make sure you clearly understand the terms under which they've made that available to you for use. So very often you can use a sound if you're educating people, but if you're trying to sell them something, an author might say, no, you can't use my sound. So anyways, a great resource for that. Great sources of content, too. There's lots of free content you can use, create your own, or you can go to sites like Creative Commons, the Internet Archive, Wikimedia Commons. Again, though, even though they're on these sites that allow people to use this content, you still want to always double check and make sure that you clearly understand the terms under which people have made this available to you. And then there's a whole bunch of different pay sites. There's just a few listed here: Adobe Stock, Getty Images, Loop Sound, World Diffuse Stock Music, where you can actually pay and buy the right to use someone's song creation. Again, though, each one of those is going to come with a contract that's going to tell you specifically how you can use it and how you can't use it. So you want to make sure before you pay for a piece of audio or a picture that you intend to use that you have bought something that's going to give you the right to use it in the way that you wish to use it. So, any questions on that? All right. All right, so we've seen the canvas. We've created a bit of audio with Abby's help. We've listened to how to edit that individual piece of audio. Now how do we take it and put it all together into a final creation? I just have a short video to introduce that topic.
In this short video, we'll see how to assemble the final production. Here's the canvas, and we looked at some of these elements, and you see these two items down below here, the audio clip, the audio icon that brands the production, and then the speaker intro. Again, we'll zoom in here a little bit so we can see a little better. Over here is our collection of assets. These are the various different components that we're going to use to assemble the final production. You see I'm able to resize this window so we can accommodate plenty of different assets. And you may see that we have already in here some assets: the intro voice, the edited clip that we just worked on, the bumper sounds, and then there's our outro and then our speech at the end there too as well. I previously recorded my intro, so I'll just open that up, let you listen to that. Hi everybody, it's another edition of Conversations, and we're coming to you this week. So now we'll go back to the canvas and I'll show you the first element of our composition here, where we can just simply drag and drop this piece of audio and put it into the canvas. I haven't really talked about markers, but you'll see here I have a marker that I can then move, and this makes it easier for me to make sure that I place the next piece of audio in the right location.
Sure. So I think first and foremost, I'd say we're really trying to give some...
You see I demonstrated another way to be able to listen to these individual clips rather than having to go into the clip itself and play it back. Just simply click that little play button, and I now know that that piece of audio is what I'm looking to work on next. And I simply drag and drop it.
All right, so basics of how you start to assemble your final production. Hopefully straightforward. Anybody have any questions about that? You see, very flexible. The ability to see why the tracks are important, to be able to separate between your audio, your guest's audio, the various different components of the final production, the ability to drag and drop, the ability to be able to, I could double click on either of these if I didn't like the way it sounded when they came together, go back in and do some additional editing, and then save them, and then just come right back in here and edit again. So that's each of the different softwares have a different way of doing this, but it gives you a sense of the basic tools you'd see in a lot of them. So the final production, when you've got it all pulled together, there's not just going to be one or two pieces of audio. There's going to be audio in the various different tracks. There's the 2 tracks for the interview. Each of these are individual clips that I've taken from the bigger, broader interview that I did. These are the ones that I've recorded, and be able to mix and match and push them around. And this is a really interesting and fun part of pulling it all together at the end. You see that we have the ability to put lots and lots of clips there, and they're all in the library to be able to drag and drop and edit and listen to. Everything's inserted in that timeline that I talked about at the beginning. And you see across the top here, it gives you a sense for how long the conversation is. So when I sat down with this person, I said, let's do 3 or 4 minutes. We ended up with 8 minutes, but it turned out to be 8 minutes of very compelling conversation that people were interested in. And it's gotten, I think I posted this interview about 3 weeks ago, and it's gotten hundreds of downloads. And I'll show you how people get to it in a minute. And the last thing you do is, once you've pulled all these pieces together in this canvas, you're going to want to export it. So it's very straightforward. Just click File and Export, and then you have a number of different options you can apply at the very end here. And one of the things that I did, I mentioned it earlier, was I always convert the final master to mono to make sure that whether people have good headsets or not, they can listen to it. You save it, and then you're ready to publish. Any questions? Cool, okay. So publishing, Mark and I talked a little bit about this before. There's lots of different choices, and if you're talking about your business, we all want to be cost conscious. We also want to balance the costs along with the services that you receive. So as I said, if you want to go viral, then probably SoundCloud is a great choice. There's other great choices. Libsyn. I use Hipcast, and I do that because I've used it for many years. It suits the needs of my business. If at some point in the future I wanted to change the way I do things, I might change to someone else. But one of the things that you want to really think about as you determine which service you're going to use is their flexibility, the long-term implications. If you're going to create a body of work and you're going to put it out there on the internet, you're not going to want to move it in the future. And so, and that's one of the things of me continuing to use the service that I've used for years, is that if I were to if I have things that are still relevant, I don't want my audience who's subscribed to those to lose track of them. So in the future, if I wanted to add another service, I'd end up paying for 2 for as long as that older content remained relevant. So another thing too is, in business, we want to make sure that we're having an impact. And so you want to look at the analytics that a service provides to you. And those are things that can be additional charges on top of the basic hosting services. Yes, Mark?
So what is the optimal length for a podcast? Is it similar to like a YouTube video, 2-3 minutes? And what is the open length for podcasts? Is it similar to email, 2 to 5 or so?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the analytics and effectiveness in a minute. The length really depends upon what are you trying to say, who is it you're speaking to, who is it you're talking to. So as I say, I like to go shorter rather than longer, but sometimes there's a topic that needs to go longer. What I've done, though, in some cases, for instance, I did a podcast with a woman who's very active in the disability community, and she had a great deal of things important to say, so I serialized the podcast. Instead of having it be 30 minutes, I broke it up into segments, right? And that also gives you the ability, as you execute your social media plan, to have more things to point to. So you want to make sure that, oh, remember, if you didn't listen to episode 1, go back to go back there and listen now, and then catch up later. So, yes.
So how are these hosting services like website hosting services, and how do they mesh with each other?
That's right. So they are like a website hosting service, but the technology is a little bit different in how podcasts are distributed. And so that's one of the things you want to look at when you're determining the service you want to use for your business is how do I want people to reach me, and can I syndicate? And I'll talk in a minute about syndication methods. But that's part of when you're deciding which service you're going to choose, the decision criteria you want to sort of apply to it. Make sense? Any other questions? All right. So HipCast, I use it because it's affordable. It provides features that I need. I'll talk in the next slide about more generic features everyone needs, but RSS is really simple syndication. That's an important feature. Integration with iTunes, that's a very important feature because so many people will go to iTunes for their content. And also what I like about it is links to Google Analytics, because rather than, there's some ways, there's some deficiencies in how podcast analytics work, and so to be able to get as many different sources of information about how people are using them is important. So I use Google Analytics, and I can link to that. That doesn't look good at all, that picture. But so the basics we all need: ease of use, reliability, the syndication ability, iTunes integration, and the ability to link to advanced analytics. The basics, you want a service that has a directory of its own, besides being able to feed into iTunes and others. You want it to be able to integrate to iTunes. I keep hitting on that point, but it's very important, and there's some of my Tech Talk episodes. And so the great thing about iTunes is people who use iTunes can view them in iTunes, they can subscribe to them, so that when I issue a new podcast, they're notified, and as soon as they plug in their iPod, they get a copy of it. So that's really important. And then RSS, really simple syndication. That's the most basic method of syndicating. And what that allows you to be able to do is have your podcast, have people subscribe, have your podcast posted on other people's websites, and have the content always be up to date. And also, another important thing is integration with the blogging platform that you're going to use. And some of the most popular ones are WordPress and Blogger. I use Blogger for the Viking Voices podcast. I write for a number of industry publications, and so when I'm writing for those publications, I use their platform. But I want to make sure that my podcast, if I'm going to use that, and part of the things I want to produce is able to be syndicated to that platform. Why RSS? I just copied this from Google. The bottom line is that subscribing to feeds is easy. It's for the publisher. It permits instant distribution, and if you're going to be having advertisement, it also gives lots of different feature functionality for that too as well. Beyond iTunes, there, as we talked about this a little bit earlier, podcatchers, or podcasting aggregation services. These are services that you can sign up with. They will make sure that they will often give you a page of your own on their service, like you have your iTunes page. You'll also have on one of these podcasting excuse me, services. Many of them will have like Player FM. They'll have an app. So just like iTunes, the app, people keep track of the podcasts that they listen to, subscribe to your feed, get your news feed as they come through. So, any questions on that? I touched on it a couple times. Okay.
We can do back to the
Yeah. See that hit the right button. Grab a lot of water. Do you have a question about that, Mark? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I hit. Sorry, I didn't go up. There we go. Yes, please. Some of them are. Some of them are just free. So Player FM is free, and I know I used that. There's maybe 1,000 of these different services.
You know how if you post something to YouTube, you have a channel, you can post that back to your website. Do they all have the same sort of backward?
In this case, this is more of you've published something, they catch it, and they publish it to their audience. So yes.
Is there either a blog, not blog, sorry, I know there exist blogs. Is there a specialized podcast search engine? And is there any podcast aggregators? You know, from different platforms that say you're the most popular podcaster currently outside of iTunes?
Yes. So that's really what the aggregators. That's really what this is. As far as a search engine, yeah. As far as a search engine specific to podcast, I'm not sure. I don't know. But I do know that Google and Yahoo and various different search engines, if you just put that in as a criteria, you'll get tons and tons of.
Are most of these mobile friendly at this point, or mobile responsive?
I can't speak to all of them. I know Player FM is, and of course iTunes is. Yes.
Which begs the question, how do people mostly listen to podcasts these days? Their mobile devices, I use my phone for podcasts, I don't use anything else.
Yes.
Most of the podcasts that I listen to come off of radio channels.
Yes, yes.
But that's me. So
I think that most people today will listen on their phones. Although, I don't know, it's motivating enough. If you go into the gym, you might put on your iPod Nano. But I think most people do it on their phones today. It's one of those things that's constantly evolving. So, as far as, so you talked about radio, so you go to the individual radio station's website to, yeah.
For example, I found this easier because I listen to I love the NPR app. So
Yes.
I find this is just, I think I'm stuck in old time thinking.
Yes.
I found compelling content coming from radio stations. That's just
Yeah. Well, typically, those radio stations will have also subscribed to these podcatchers, and so you'll find them here too as well. What they'll be, when somebody finds my podcast on iTunes, they're really linking back to my Hipcast account. All iTunes is doing is giving a link back to the original. And it's using that RSS feed that I talked about to be able to know where to go to find it.
But for the purpose of my website, I need the podcast to be available on the website.
Yeah, I'll show you that in just a second. Yeah, I'll show you that in a second.
I have a question. How do you see podcasts fitting in with live streams and video blogging?
It's all part of.
Is it relevant? Is it increasingly relevant?
I think they're all going to be relevant. It's everyone's speaking to everyone in whatever methodology they want to use, and so As I showed at the beginning there on the statistics, especially in the last couple of years, that podcasting is ramping up. So even though it's been around since the beginning of the internet, it's really starting to hit its stride now too. And although those other things are complementary, I think the mobility trend is bringing everything along with it. Yeah. So people are becoming more and more comfortable all the time with instead of listening to the radio station to get the weather on the 10s, going and getting it as they wish on demand when they want it. So, thank you. All right. See how we're doing on time? Okay. All right, good. Excuse me. I won't punish you too much longer. I think we're getting into the final stretch here. But so one of the things that I think you really want to do is, if you're doing this for your business, you want to have a blog and you want to publish your podcast to your blog. Let's get a little bit bleached out here, so it's a little difficult to see, but embedded in this page is a player. And so what you can do, if you've got the right podcasting service, and most of them will have this capability, is the ability to be able to take a snippet of code and embed it in your blogging page. And so right here on this page, people have the ability to go to the blog. I usually write something about the blog. The great thing about the blog is the ability to be able to combine lots of different elements into one place. So not only can people listen to your podcast, I was going to point it out here before I clicked, I should have. You also have the button where they can download from iTunes. It depends on the bit of code that you have, but if your podcasting service also lets them subscribe, maybe there's a subscribe button there. And then to be able to add links, if you have sponsors, to be able to add ads, to be able to put a transcript. So I said, sometimes I summarize. I would love to be able to do a full transcript, because especially for people who have disabilities, maybe they can't listen to the podcast, but they could read the text. I don't always have the time. If you're doing it for your business and you feel that's important, there's transcription services that you can use where they'll take the audio and transcribe it for you, and then you can just cut and paste it into your blog. The ability to add photos. And then probably most importantly, getting back to that topic of this being part of an overall social media strategy, get the conversation going. So having the ability to have people comment here, having the ability up above to, oops, shoot, didn't mean to do that, hit one time too many. To add social media widgets so that people can tweet about the content they find, or Google Plus it, or email it, share it in lots of different ways. So what I find is this is probably the most important thing after you've gone all the trouble of recording, editing, producing the presentation. And I find the most important part of the presentation, the most important tool in presenting is to use a blog page. Did anyone have any questions?
Yeah. What's some donations for podcasting?
I'm sorry?
Donations, like don't have bad practices.
Don't curse, don't, again, getting back to the beginning where we talked about, we want to have relevant, succinct, compelling content if possible. Don't be boring. And I just noticed as I'm speaking here with you, I keep going as I think about what I want to say. Get rid of the ums and the ahs, right? Get rid of some of the breaths. Make it as interesting a production as possible. Just always keep in mind who's going to be listening to this, who could possibly, and all of the billions of people in this world who might download and listen to this podcast, who could possibly listen to it and try to make it as compelling as possible, as easy as possible for them. But then again, keeping your audience in mind, your target, what your business is trying to speak to and what you're trying to speak about, those are the things you really want to focus on.
Have you ever cross-promoted your blog? I mean, your
Yes, actually, yeah. When I was working for that corporation earlier, when I did the Tech Talk podcast, I was part of a team, and there were several of us that would podcast, and we would all cross promote one another's podcasts. So definitely so, and you might. It's a business arrangement. You might do it for a charge, or you might just do it because you want to make sure somebody you think is very interesting gets the props they need. So. Yes.
Is that your blog page?
I produce content for a number of industry publications. No Jitter is one of them. So this is my page on No Jitter. I also do publish for Network World, and then I do have my own as well.
Your own blog page?
Yes. The one that I am doing most of my work with today is this Salem State SSU Viking Voices. That's the individual podcasts that I do, and the rest of the stuff that I do is through these industry publications. So.
More effective than like email blast or PDF file?
I think so. Really, I think you can reach many more people. One of the things I don't talk really about here is search engine optimization, and it's another whole science. But you want your stuff, if it's relevant to prospective customers, to be able to be found on search engines. So being able to produce a blog and having it found by a search engine, putting the right keywords in, that's all part of that. Sure, yeah. I mean, experiment. One of the things I'll wait till the end, but there's other ways of taking the content you've produced and making things out of it, and use those in your blogs too as well. So, yes, I believe you had a question.
I noticed you haven't mentioned using YouTube for your audio.
I actually was going to show that at the very end. So I do use YouTube as well, and I think we're almost there. So I mentioned analytics. So we're talking about the voice of your business here today. You want to make sure that if you go to this effort and expense, if you're doing it, you want to be able to find out whether or not you're having an impact. Now, there's a quote here from Rob Walsh of Libsyn, is that metrics around podcasts can be difficult because, as he says, just because somebody downloads a copy of your podcast doesn't mean that they ever listened to it. So getting appropriate statistics is a little bit tough sometimes. So I take an approach of using multiple different ways of being able to get that information. One of those ways is that I use Google Analytics as a feed. There's a service in Google, it's a free service, FeedBurner. I'll show you that in a second, that allows you to be able to get some analytics and statistics. So just a bunch of different things. This is from Hipcast, my podcasting service. There's some reports on there that give me an idea of how many times something's been downloaded. If people listen online, how much time they spent online, so that gives me a sense for things, whether they're popular or not. I get to see RSS requests, and then the Google Analytics gives me all kinds of information from where in the world people are listening, how many times they've downloaded. If you want to pay additional services to Google, they'll even tell you more specific granular information about the people who are actually at least clicking on your podcast. You don't know if they've listened to it, but at least they've clicked on it. And Google Analytics is a subject for a whole other day's conversation, but to give you a sense.
I have a question. When you have that section for comments for people,
yes.
Do you have the ability to control what you publish out there and what you don't?
It depends on the commenting engine that's part of the platform that you're using. There's a bunch of different of them, but Discuss is one that's very popular. Sometimes the blogging platform itself has its own commenting engine that allows you to moderate the conversation.
Sometimes you get like yahoos that are just like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
You know?
Especially when I worked for the company, global company, people would come to the blog page of my podcast, and they put in their advertisements, they put in all kinds of things. So that's important to have that functionality of your business to be able to moderate, especially. Yeah.
And I was going to ask you one other thing. How long do you think it stays relevant? Like if you put it on your website, how long should you keep it there before it gets old?
Really, as long as the topic that you've talked about is relevant. So curating is part of your plan here. You want to make sure you get rid of things that are old, but again, something that old can become new again. So so you might want to bring it back from the dead sometimes. So you maybe don't take the audio down, but you take the blog post that points to it down. But in some points in the future, I've had topics in my blogs and podcasts where I'll say, 2 years ago I said this, and guess what? It came true.
Now I wonder, is there anything that can make it cyclical so that you're constantly, there's something that's automated that's constantly updating your website and maybe taking from your podcast library?
There are services that can do that. Yeah.
Might be the editorial calendar. So you go the first of the month, they'll do something.
Right. That's one of the things I strive for, and unfortunately don't being individual, don't have the bandwidth. But if you've got staff, definitely you want to set a cadence so people can expect that your next episode is going to appear on Monday, and they'll look forward to it. So.
One of the biggest problems I didn't categorize it. I didn't put this many categories.
Yes.
There, who would want to see it?
Yeah, tagging is another important thing. Thinking of a structure for your tags, making them consistent, so that if there's a topic that you keep coming back to, people can click on that tag, and it'll bring up all of the podcasts you've said about that. Touched on that. Yeah. So but it's also a step that you've gone through all the time and effort, and you built everything, and you just want to get it out there, and then you put it in the WordPress. It's like, oh man, do I really have to put the keywords in now? Well, the answer is yes. Stop for a second, think about the keywords, and do them, because they're very important. So I mentioned FeedBurner. It's serviced by Google, free service. It provides additional statistics. It's important in that Google Analytics to use FeedBurner if you're going to want to use that. There's lots of different services that are available, and most of them are free, so why not take advantage of them? And since it's Google, you're also search engine optimizing your content too as well. So that's an important part of it. And then we're getting to the last of the PREPP acronym, promote. Excuse me. So promoting, as I've said a couple of times, is really part of an overall social media plan. And I just sort of have a template up here. I talked a couple of times about SSU Viking Voices. I'm working with a group of students here on campus, the Public Relations Society, and we're working on a social media plan for Viking Voices for this year. So that's sort of the not yet filled out plan. But the key of it is that you have a plan. I think it's most important to use the blog as your central point of your plan. Your goal is to drive traffic to that blog. The blog then drives traffic to, in my case, my FeedBurner account, which then drives stats to my analytics. And so I'm able to use various different, you can't see it very well bleached out up here, but various different tactics, whether it's the blog, the podcast, Twitter, all the different social media tactics to drive people to the blog, get them to listen, interested in the content, read and listen, which then drives to the feed and drives to the statistics. lots of different promotional tools. When you do, you've got your blog, but then you want to take it to the next step. You want to go to the places where people who you want to attract are going to be looking for it. So LinkedIn, and I almost always will go to LinkedIn and post when I have a new edition of one of my publications. I don't use Facebook that much, but if you use Facebook for your business, that's probably an important tool to be used. Google Plus, you know, people use it, some do, some don't. But Twitter, a very important part of your social strategy. And then tracking it. Tools for executing. So this is a free tool if you use Twitter. It's called TweetDeck. Allows you to, I don't know if Abby has noticed, but...
So I'm tweeting right now at the Enterprise Center in the North Carolina Economic Development. And you schedule some tweets.
That's right.
You can also schedule tweets on TweetDeck. So
Right.
he's been tweeting as he's been presenting. So I've been retweeting him because he's scheduled tweets. So that's what we're going to do on this floor.
Been live tweeting. So I did them late last night, so hopefully they're okay. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Oh, I get it now. Yeah. Very good. Very fun.
Magician, yeah.
You've got a Twitter too, with 140 characters, and you should try to do anywhere about 100 and 105.
Yes.
Because people want to retweet it, and so don't go to the max, because you don't give people much choice.
That's a very good point. Yeah, make sure you leave a little bit of space in the 140 characters so that people can retweet and add their own comments if they would like to. So, TweetDeck is a free service. Is also
on Twitter. You know how some people, when you connect with them and follow them, they automatically have an email that gets sent to you to say hello.
Right.
Do they have to have a special business service to do that?
Yes, there's people buy business services that do that, help them grow their audience.
From Twitter.
From Twitter. Well, it's not from. Well, in addition to Twitter, there's other services that sell that service as well. So,
I see.
yeah, I don't particularly use them. I don't know. I don't really have that many Twitter followers, but I think the Twitter followers I have followed me because they liked something that I've said or done. So having, it depends. For a business, if you're trying to reach a global audience, people are coming to visit Salem and you want them to know about the fame, you might want to grow a global audience.
I was always impressed. I'm like they act like, because it's very personal, like they want to connect with you or for a particular reason.
Yes.
So I think it does its best to start a conversation.
Yes, yes. Well, what I try to do is when people follow me on Twitter is I try to thank them back, and then I look at them, and if they're not sketchy, I follow them back too.
Right.
So it's the whole social thing. Yeah, I do it manually, but there are services that will do it in an automated fashion. I mentioned TweetDeck is free. Hootsuite is another. It's like TweetDeck on steroids. You pay for Hootsuite for the additional analytics. So that's a tool that a lot of people use. I don't feel it's worth the investment for me personally, but it's a great tool as well. So, and then last but not least, getting to the subject of YouTube. You have this great audio. You've done all this work. Why not repurpose it? And what I'm also going to do about today's presentation is I'm going to repurpose the slides I've shown you, the audio that the Enterprise Center is recorded. I'm going to put it all together. I'm going to create a YouTube video and have that as well. Now, there are people who, rather than have moving pictures and slides, they'll just put up a single image, but have the audio of the podcast as well. Yeah. And as Mark was saying earlier, one of the great things about it is if you want to reach the disability community, you can also put a transcript in there that can be closed captioned through YouTube. So there's a lot of value to that. Yeah. 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 Great. Yes.
So do we have a copy of your PowerPoint presentation here?
Yeah. So I'll give you my email address. If you want to send me an email, I'll be glad to send you a copy. So, and also I'll send you the link to the video too as well.
When people start a business, like you can start a website on GoDaddy or one of the others, is there a better website channel that can better accept videos or begin to accept your podcast or messaging?
There's lots of different choices out there, and when you're deciding that you want to look at all of those different options, and yeah, it's cost benefit. It's depending on how you want to.
Okay. You don't know if one is better than the other as far as.
Well, for me, for my business, when I'm doing things for myself, I go with the free things, Blogger. But one of the things that, as I mentioned, I'm able to provide content to a bunch of different industry publications for people in the industry that I've focused on. That's a great way to do it. You don't have to pay the expense for it. What I'm finding today, because media is exploding so much, a lot of these publications are looking for people. If you're going to produce a quality product, they'll take it. So Network World is a global publication, and I just noticed one day they were looking for I forget what they call it, the network. I forget what they call it exactly, but I just basically clicked on, filled out a short form, got an email back from them, and a week later I was in a conversation with them about now I have a blog on Network World that's a global publication. So that's something to think about. If you're promoting your business, they're in the business of selling ads. They're going to want to buy something. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to think about there. So.
I was just going to say tradehub.org. They have almost every trade industry association. A lot of them you get free publications, either via electronically, like ebooks, physical magazines. That's a good way to find people. They don't have every single one, but there's probably the most comprehensive place you can find. And I mean, it gets real niche. If you're in a very narrow vertical, there's probably some sort of market there for you to start with that. And then even just getting one, you can find other things.
Great suggestion. So I think we're about 5 minutes from the end of the session. Does anyone else have any last questions? Yes, please.
The last slide, you mentioned uploading back to the podcast service.
So, yes, I'm sorry. So some podcasting services will let you do video as well as audio. I should have mentioned that. So that's right.
Almost like enhanced podcast.
Yes. So, and then they'll maybe have an app that will let you view the video as well.
So then we look at the podcast hosting service. That is one feature that you can do.
You can, yeah. I would say with YouTube and Vimeo, they're the places where most people go for video. So yeah. But it's a nice additional feature if you can find that for your podcasting server. So. Yes, please.
As far as YouTube, do you have any strategy or anything that is kind of, to help build the audience on that?
Well, you want to create your own channel, for sure, and you want to pay attention to the branding around that channel, and then it's about the tactics that you employ to drive people to that. Keywords, search engine optimization, using your Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn accounts to let people know the content is there and get them to.
First thing you said on that is the first one. So
LinkedIn, Facebook, Google Plus, yeah. One of the points I forgot to cover that I should have is as many as you are able to dedicate resources to. In order of importance, I think, professionally, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, maybe if your business has a presence on Facebook. And then there's lots of different, from filtering on down from there. But the idea, I think, is it's social. So you want to grow your social community. And to be able to grow your social community, you want to be able to produce the content that people are going to be interested in. So it's a commitment, right? So you don't want to overcommit. Try to do too many things and not do a good enough job at it. You want to make sure that what you can do is in your reasonable expectations. So I'm not sure whichever's first, but please.
A ballpark figure of what the equipment would cost other than the computer.
Oh, yeah, so this good quality headset, you can spend thousands. This is a couple $100 for this headset. These microphones, they're about $120 each. This was about $200. So you don't have to spend a tremendous amount, but probably maybe $1,000 when you're all said and done. This I didn't really point it out very much, but this is a great tool, this Zoom recorder. It's got a couple of really great microphones on it. It's got the ability to record to an SD chip in here. It's portable. Sometimes the quality lacks a little bit, but you can also, as I'm using it here today, you can use it as a recording interface into the computer. So there's a lot of value to that. This one has 2 channels. They have 4 channels, 8 channels. So that's a great maybe way to start. And then if you're going to want to get more sophisticated about it, expanding. I think this, to buy this new, it's about $400. And this is an older one. There's newer ones that plug directly into the computer, and then there's lots of different manufacturers of mixing components and things. So, yes.
I just have one thing about equipment. I know at one point I was a member of Salem Access, and if you don't want to invest money in equipment, you can probably think about joining that, and then you can use their equipment for things and learn about it, and then it's yeah.
I have an announcement.
Yes.
So you said, so Cambridge